There's a photograph taken on November 2nd, 1933, in Weimar, Germany, featuring Adolf Hitler. He stands in a museum dressed in a civilian coat, gazing at a marble bust with enormous, bushy mustaches. Hitler appears reverent, looking at the sculpture like a student at a teacher. On that day, he declared the museum the center of National Socialist ideology. For millions, this photograph cemented a simple truth. Friedrich Nietzsche was the prophet of Nazism, the godfather of fascism, the man who conceived of the Übermensch to justify concentration camps and war. But if that piece of marble could come to life for just 1 second, if Friedrich Nietzsche could open his mouth and see who stood before him, he wouldn't smile. He would spit directly in the dictator's face. Welcome to the story of the greatest intellectual theft of the 20th century. Most of what you've heard about Nietzsche in school or seen in pop culture is a lie. And this lie wasn't created by critics or enemies. It was created by the person closest to him, his sister, Elisabeth Forster Nietzsche. Remember that name. She is the main villain in our story. Unlike her brother, Elisabeth was a fanatical nationalist and a fervent anti-Semite. She married an ideologue who tried to create a pure Aryan colony in the jungles of Paraguay. Nietzsche despised her views. He wrote angry letters, calling anti-Semites failures, and forbidding his sister from introducing him to her racist friends. "It disgusts me that this cursed German anti-Semitic rabble tries to appropriate my ideas," he wrote. But fate played a cruel trick on him. In 1889, in Turin, Nietzsche saw a coachman beating a horse. The philosopher ran over, embraced the animal's neck, and wept. At that moment, his sanity collapsed. For the next 11 years, until his death, he remained in a catatonic state. He couldn't speak, write, or defend himself. He became a living doll. And then Elisabeth seized power. She returned from Paraguay, dressed her brother in white robes like a prophet, and began bringing tourists to him, showcasing the mad genius as a museum exhibit. But the most terrible things she did were in the archive. Armed with scissors and glue, Elisabeth began editing her brother's drafts. She cut out pieces of text, rearranged them, discarded entire pages where he criticized Germany, and inserted phrases she liked. She literally fabricated the book, The Will to Power. Nietzsche never wrote such a book. It was a Frankenstein stitched together by his sister from scraps of notes to please Nazi ideology. When Hitler came to power, Elisabeth welcomed him with open arms. She gave him her brother's cane. She convinced the Führer that the Übermensch was a description of the Aryan race, not a spiritual goal for an individual. And the world believed it. Wehrmacht soldiers carried "Thus Spoke Zarathustra" in their rucksacks alongside their rifles, unaware that the author of that book hated everything they were fighting for. It wasn't until the 1960s, when Italian scholars gained access to the original manuscripts, that the full extent of the forgery was uncovered. They saw glue marks. They saw torn pages. They saw the real Nietzsche. And this real Nietzsche is far more frightening than the caricatured Nazi. He didn't call for the conquest of Poland. He called for self-conquest. He didn't want to create an army of clones in identical uniforms. He wanted to create individuals capable of dancing on the abyss. Today, we live in a world that Nietzsche predicted with frightening accuracy. We live in a crisis of meaning. We feel an anxiety that antidepressants cannot cure. And that is why we need to clear his name. We need to hear his real warning. Because his philosophy doesn't begin with politics. It begins with a crime scene. It begins with the moment humanity committed a murder that changed everything. If you walk into any t-shirt store for rebellious teenagers, you'll inevitably find this print: "God is dead, Nietzsche." This phrase is usually interpreted as a triumphant cry, an atheist's slogan proudly proclaiming, "Look, I don't believe in fairy tales. I believe in science. We've conquered superstition." But this is a fundamental error. Nietzsche never uttered these words with joy. He uttered them with horror. For him, the death of God was not a liberation, but a catastrophe of cosmic proportions. Let's turn to the original source, the gay science, where this phrase first appears. Nietzsche describes a scene that resembles a thriller more than a philosophical treatise. Imagine a bright, sunny morning. A man runs into the marketplace. He looks insane. In his hands, he carries a lit lantern. He runs among the crowd, shouting, "I seek God! I seek God!" The people in the square laugh. They no longer believe. They are modern, secular people. They shout back at him. Did he get lost? Or did he hide? Maybe he emigrated. They mock the madman. But suddenly, the madman stops. He smashes the lantern on the ground. The fire goes out. He looks them in the eye and says something that chills their blood. "Where is God? I will tell you. We have killed him. You and I. We are all his murderers." Nietzsche isn't talking about the literal death of a being on a cloud. He's talking about the death of the foundation on which Western civilization stood for 2,000 years. God was not just an object of faith. He was a guarantor of meaning. He was the absolute. Thanks to him, we knew what good and evil were. We knew that history had a purpose. We knew that human life had supreme value because it possessed an immortal soul. We had objective truth. And now, Nietzsche says, we have killed this truth. Through science, rationalism, progress, we have proven that we are merely primates on a small rock flying nowhere. But we haven't understood the consequences. The madman continues his speech. And here, one of the most terrifying metaphors in the history of philosophy rings out. How could we drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What did we do when we unchained this earth from its sun? Ponder this image. Wipe away the entire horizon. The horizon is the line that separates sky from earth. It's the line that allows us to orient ourselves. Where is up? Where is down? Which way to go? If there is no horizon, there is no direction, no right and wrong, no up and down. The madman asks, whither are we moving? Away from all suns? Are we not plunging continually, backward, sideward, forward, in all directions? Is there still any up or down? Are we not straying as through an infinite nothing? Is not empty space now breathing upon us? Has it not become colder? This is what Nietzsche warned about. By killing God, we created a vacuum. We removed the core that held morality together. And Nietzsche knew that this vacuum would not remain empty. He predicted that the 20th century would be an era of unprecedented wars and ideologies. Because when there is no God, idols take his place. Nazism, communism, the cult of the state, the cult of science, all are attempts to plug the hole in the sky. attempts to create a new, artificial meaning for which one can kill. The people in Nietzsche's parable fall silent. They look at the madman with surprise. They don't understand. They think they've simply stopped going to church. They don't feel the cold of empty space. The madman looks at them and says, "I have come too early. My time is not yet. This tremendous event is still on its way." Today, in the 21st century, the madman has finally reached us. We live in a world where old values have collapsed, and new ones have yet to emerge. We feel this disorientation. We feel like we're falling. We call it a mental health crisis, an epidemic of loneliness, or a loss of meaning. But in reality, it's the echo of that very cry in the marketplace. The earth is unchained from the sun. Old maps no longer work. And when the great purpose disappears, when the striving for the divine vanishes, a new type of human emerges. A human who wants to strive for nothing. A human who simply wants to fall comfortably. In his seminal work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche describes a scene that today reads like a prime-time news report. Zarathustra descends from the mountains. He wants to tell people about the Übermensch, a being who will surpass humanity as much as humanity has surpassed the ape. He speaks to them of greatness, of danger, of the stars. But the crowd in the marketplace laughs at him. They don't need stars. They don't need greatness, because greatness implies risk, and they want security. And then Zarathustra decides to frighten them. He says, "Very well. If you do not want to hear about the Übermensch, I will show you what you will become if you continue on this path. I will show you the last man." And here, Nietzsche takes out a mirror and holds it before us. The last man is the ultimate destination of a civilization that has killed God and found nothing in return. The earth has become small, Nietzsche says, and on it hops the last man, who makes everything small. Who is this? This is a creature that has completely eliminated extremes. The last man cannot love intensely, nor can he hate intensely, because both love and hate are stress. They are a burden on the nervous system. They are bad for digestion. The last man values two things above all: comfort and security. He works, but not too much so as not to overexert himself. He entertains himself, but moderately, so as not to lose his health. He has his little pleasure for the day and his little pleasure for the night. Recognize him? Look at modern Western culture. We are obsessed with safety. We label content with warnings so that no one accidentally gets upset. We invented the term toxicity for anything that causes the slightest discomfort. We build fences in the suburbs. We insure everything, from our cars to our lives. We have turned life into a padded room. The last man looks at the heroes of the past, those who died for ideas, who burned with passion, who ventured into the unknown, and thinks, "What fools! They were crazy, but we are smart." Nietzsche writes a brilliant line describing this type of person. "We have invented happiness," say the last men, and they blink. They blink. This is not just a physiological action. It's a symbol of dullness and lack of depth. They look at the world superficially. They don't need deep meanings. They need dopamine. They need Netflix, good food, a soft couch, and a pill if they suddenly feel sad. For Nietzsche, this is not happiness. This is sedation. It's a cattle yard where the animals are well fed, vaccinated, and content, but they have ceased to be wild. They have ceased to be fully alive. The last man is the end of evolution. He doesn't want to change. He wants to preserve himself in this warm swamp forever. He says, "It would be madness to want anything more." And you know what's most terrifying about Nietzsche's prophecy? It's not the description of the last man. It's the crowd's reaction to that description. When Zarathustra finishes painting this portrait of a degraded, petty, cowardly creature, he expects people to be horrified, that they will cry out, "No, we don't want to be like that." Instead, the crowd joyfully screams, "Give us this last man, O Zarathustra. Turn us into these last men, and keep the Übermensch for yourself." They want it. They want to be vegetables connected to a life support system of pleasures. Because being an Übermensch is difficult. It's painful. It's terrifying. But being the last man is easy. And here we are. In a world where social media algorithms do everything to prevent us from exerting ourselves. In a world where the main goal in life is to retire and do nothing, we have built a paradise for the last man. But Nietzsche warned this comfort is a trap. Behind the facade of happiness and security lies a black hole, a disease that eats away at the soul from within. The comfort of the last man is an illusion, a thin crust of ice on a deep black lake. And sooner or later, the ice cracks. When religion departed and science failed to provide us with moral guidance, we encountered a malady that Nietzsche was the first to diagnose: nihilism. From the Latin nihil, nothing. Many believe that a nihilist is simply a sad teenager who wears black and claims life is pain. But for Nietzsche, nihilism was a far more complex and dangerous phenomenon. It's a state where higher values are devalued, where the answer to the question why simply vanishes. Nietzsche identified two types of this virus. The first is passive nihilism. This is what we now call the doomer epidemic. It's a state of complete resignation. You understand that the world is unjust, that God is gone, that politicians lie, and your reaction is to lie down on the bed and turn to the wall. Nothing matters, so why bother? The passive nihilist is a Buddhist in the worst European sense of the word. He wants to stifle his desire to live so as not to suffer. He slowly fades away. It's spiritual anesthesia. But there's a second type, active nihilism. This is a force of destruction. The active nihilist also sees that old values are lies. But he doesn't lie on the couch. He picks up a hammer. He begins to smash idols. He attacks traditions, morality, the state. This is a necessary stage. To build a new house, you must demolish the old, decaying shack. But here lies a deadly trap. And it's about this trap that Nietzsche wrote his most famous, most quoted, and most misunderstood phrase. It goes like this: "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." Horror film directors love to put this quote at the beginning of films about serial killers. But Nietzsche wasn't writing a Hollywood script. He was writing a warning for your sanity. The abyss is the absence of meaning. It's the chaos of reality, devoid of human laws. When you, an active nihilist, begin to deconstruct the world, when you start asking, why is it this way? You peer into this void. You see that morality is an invention, that justice is a myth, that love is chemistry. You gaze into the abyss, trying to understand the truth. The danger is that emptiness is contagious. If you focus too long on the idea that life has no meaning, this vacuum penetrates within you. The abyss begins to gaze back into you. You become as empty, cold, and indifferent as the universe you are studying. You lose your humanity. You lose the ability to create. The same goes for fighting dragons. If you dedicate your life to fighting something you hate, the system, enemies, stupidity, you begin to reflect your enemy. Your personality begins to be defined by what you are against, rather than who you are. You become a mirror image of the monster. Nihilism, both passive and active, is not the end. It's a transitional period. It's a tunnel. If you get stuck in the tunnel, you will suffocate. The passive nihilist dies of suffocation on the spot. The active nihilist blows up the tunnel walls and buries himself under the rubble. Nietzsche says we must pass through nihilism. We must survive the death of God, survive the loss of meaning. Look into the abyss, see the horror there, and not blink. Not become a monster, and not become the last man. We need to evolve into something third. We need a being that can look into the empty, meaningless abyss and not be frightened, but smile. A being that will say, "There's no meaning? Great. That means I can create my own." This requires a transformation of the spirit, which Nietzsche described in a beautiful and strange metaphor. Forget everything you've seen in comic book movies. Nietzsche's Übermensch is not a guy in a blue costume who flies and shoots lasers from his eyes. It's not Captain America. And, contrary to Nazi fantasies, it's not a 6-foot-tall blonde with blue eyes marching across Europe. The Übermensch, or Superman, is not a biological species. It's a psychological altitude. The word Über means over or beyond. Mensch means human. A more accurate translation would be one who has surpassed humanity. Nietzsche saw us not as the pinnacle of creation, but as a draft. We are an unstable being. We are a bridge stretched between the animal and something great. And our task is not to remain on the bridge, but to cross it. But how do we do that? How do we transform from a frightened, lost creature into the creator of our own destiny? In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche describes this process through one of the most beautiful and enigmatic allegories in the history of philosophy. It's called The Three Metamorphoses of the Spirit. First, your spirit becomes a camel. The camel is a beast of burden. It is strong. It is resilient. It wants to be loaded up. It kneels and says to society, to culture, to teachers, "Give me the heaviest burden." The camel carries the weight of traditions, the weight of knowledge, the weight of morality invented by others. It learns discipline. It learns to endure. This is a necessary stage. You cannot rebel against rules if you haven't first learned them and understood their weight. Most people are born camels and die camels, proud of how much foreign junk they carry on their backs. But if the spirit is strong, the camel goes into the most desolate desert, and there the second metamorphosis takes place. The camel becomes a lion. The lion is the king of beasts. Its task is to conquer freedom. The lion wants to be master in its own desert, but to do this, it must defeat a terrible enemy. Nietzsche describes this enemy as the great dragon. The dragon gleams with gold. It has thousands of scales, and on each scale, in golden letters, is written, "Thou shalt." Thou shalt be a good citizen. Thou shalt marry. Thou shalt believe this. Thou shalt be silent. The values of millennia glitter on this beast. The dragon says, "All values have already been created, and all values are me." The camel bows before the dragon, but the lion lunges at it. The lion roars its "I will" against the dragon's "Thou shalt." This is the stage of active nihilism we discussed. The lion destroys. It shatters old tablets. It clears space. It creates freedom from something. From religion, from the state, from parental opinion. It's powerful. It's cool. But it's not the end. The lion cannot become the Übermensch. Why? Because the lion only knows how to destroy. It is reactive. Its actions depend on the dragon. Even if it defeated the dragon, it is still defined by its struggle with it. The lion is full of rage and tension. To create something new, a third, most unexpected transformation is needed. The lion must become a child. Sounds strange, right? After all that power, fangs, and fury, to become a small child? But listen to what Nietzsche says. The child is innocence and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a self-propelled wheel, a first movement, a sacred yes. The lion remembers grievances. The child forgets. The lion is tense. The child plays. Only the child is capable of the sacred yes. He doesn't fight the world. He creates his own world in play. For the child, blocks are a castle, the floor is lava, and he himself is a hero. He creates values out of nothing, simply by the power of his imagination, and believes in them absolutely. The Übermensch is one who has regained the seriousness he possessed in childhood, during play. This is the person who looks at the empty abyss where God died and says, "Excellent, I will draw my own rules here, not because I must, like the camel, and not to annoy anyone, like the lion, but simply because I enjoy playing this game." This is the highest freedom, the freedom to create meaning, not to seek it. The Übermensch is not a tyrant who enslaves others. Tyrants are usually insecure lions. The Übermensch is too busy with his creativity, his dance, his self-overcoming, to want to command a herd. But the path to this state of the child does not lie through the soft carpet of a nursery. It lies through the abyss, and walking this path is very difficult. Man is a rope tied between animal and Übermensch, a rope over an abyss. Read this image carefully. It's dizzying. Dangerous is the crossing, dangerous the on the way, dangerous the looking back, dangerous the shuddering and standing still. Nietzsche tells us the most unpleasant truth one can hear in an era of self-love and self-acceptance. He says, "You are not the final product. You are not the goal. You are merely a bridge." To love yourself as you are, for Nietzsche, this is absurd, because who you are now is merely a collection of random habits, fears, and other people's opinions. It's raw material. It's clay. The greatness of man lies not in preserving himself, but in overcoming himself. In German, there is the word Selbstüberwindung, self-overcoming. This is the central engine of all Nietzschean ethics. Imagine you are a sculptor, but you don't have a piece of marble in front of you. The marble is yourself. You are both the master and the stone. To create a beautiful statue, the sculptor must take a hammer and chisel. He must strike the stone. He must cut away the superfluous, chip off large pieces. It's a violent process. If the stone could feel, it would hurt. It would cry out, "Why are you hitting me? Why are you destroying me? Leave me alone. I was so comfortable just being a block." Nietzsche writes, "In man, creature and creator are united. In you there is material, fragments, clay, dirt, nonsense, chaos. But in you there is also a creator, a sculptor, the hardness of the hammer, a divine spectator. You must be cruel to your inner creature to free your inner creator. Your laziness, your cowardice, your dependence on others' opinions, these are pieces of granite that must be chipped away with the hammer of discipline and will. It hurts. Growth always hurts. If you are comfortable, you are not growing. You are standing still. Or, even worse, you are the last man who simply blinks. Pain is not a stop signal. Pain is the spark that flies when your old form shatters to make way for the new. It is in this context that we must understand Nietzsche's most overused, most vulgar quote, printed on mugs and social media statuses. "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." We have turned this phrase into a banal comfort. Well, I got fired, but I'll be stronger. But Nietzsche meant not passive endurance. He spoke of actively transforming poison into medicine. He spoke of deliberately seeking out difficulties. This brings us to his main practical advice. Advice that sounds like madness in the modern world of insurance policies and safe spaces. The secret of harvesting the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment from existence is to live dangerously. Live dangerously. Nietzsche isn't urging you to jump off a roof without a parachute or play Russian roulette. That's foolishness, not danger. He's talking about intellectual and spiritual danger. Build your cities on the slopes of Vesuvius. Send your ships into uncharted seas. Live in war with your equals and with yourselves. To live on Vesuvius means understanding that an eruption can happen at any moment, that there is no stability. And it is this proximity to catastrophe that makes you value every moment. Build the most beautiful houses, write the best poems, send ships into uncharted seas, and this means question your deepest beliefs, risk losing faith, risk losing friends if you've outgrown them, risk being alone for the sake of truth. It's terrifying. The bridge over the abyss sways in the wind. Below is darkness. But the only way not to fall is to keep moving forward. You must become your own experiment. Nietzsche despised dogmatists who found one right answer and settled down. For him, life is a laboratory. You are a hypothesis. Test yourself. How much truth can you bear? How heavy a hammer can you lift? This path requires colossal energy. Energy that will not run out, even if everything goes wrong. Energy that will allow you to say yes to life, even if it breaks your back. And to test if you have this energy, Nietzsche devised the most terrifying, most difficult psychological test in human history. It doesn't require physical strength. It requires strength of spirit, capable of bearing the weight of the entire universe. We have reached the darkest, deepest point of Nietzsche's philosophy. This is not a theory. It is a thought experiment that can either break you or liberate you. Nietzsche called it the greatest weight. Imagine that one day or one night, at the moment when you feel most alone, a demon creeps up to you. He leans into your ear and says, "This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more." Stop. Think about what that means. The demon isn't offering you reincarnation where you'll be someone else. He's not offering a chance to correct mistakes. He's talking about an exact copy. There will be nothing new in it, the demon whispers. Every pain and every pleasure and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small and great in your life will have to return to you. In the same sequence, the same spider on the wall, the same moonlight between the trees, the same boring job, the same argument with a loved one, the same dentist. And this moment, as I speak to you, that too will return. The hourglass of existence will be turned again and again, and you, in it, are but a grain of sand. Eternity is not a straight line. It's a circle. What would be your reaction? Nietzsche says there are two options. The first is the most likely for modern man. You would throw yourself to the ground. You would gnash your teeth. You would curse this demon as the most evil being in the universe. Why? Because for most people, the thought of reliving their failures, their shame, their boredom, and their pain an infinite number of times is the definition of hell. No cauldron of sulfur can compare to the eternal repetition of a meaningless life. This is the heavy weight. This is a burden that can crush you. But there is a second option. Have you ever experienced a monstrous moment? A moment of such power, such beauty, and such fullness that you would answer the demon, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine." If you had lived your life as an Übermensch, you would desire this repetition. You would cry out, "Yes, once more, encore." This concept is called amor fati, love of fate. This is Nietzsche's final exam. Most religions and philosophies teach us to endure fate. It's God's will. Well, what can you do? This is the position of a victim. This is the position of the camel. Nietzsche demands more. He demands not endurance. He demands love. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, he writes, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it. Love your mistakes because they made you who you are. Love your enemies because they made you stronger. Love the chaos of life because it is the fuel for your fire. If you accept the idea of eternal recurrence, it changes everything. Right now. Imagine you're about to do something petty, or simply spend the evening mindlessly scrolling on your phone. Ask yourself, do I want to do this an infinite number of times? Do I want this moment to be an eternal brick in my universe? If the answer is no, don't do it. Eternal recurrence works like a razor. It cuts away everything superfluous, everything petty, everything you do on autopilot. It forces you to live so that every moment is worthy of eternity, so that every moment is so filled with meaning and passion that you would be ready to sign a contract for its infinite repetition. This is a terrifying standard, almost unattainable. To live in such a way that you want every second to repeat requires colossal inner strength. You need an engine that will drive you forward, even when the world is collapsing. Nietzsche found this engine. He gave it a name that the Nazis distorted beyond recognition, but which actually means the highest form of self-control. The will to power. Der Wille zur Macht. These three words became Nietzsche's curse. When you hear them, your imagination likely conjures marching columns, tanks, dictators shouting from tribunes, and geopolitical maps redrawn to suit ambitions. Thanks to Nietzsche's sister and Nazi propaganda, this term became synonymous with political domination, synonymous with the desire to enslave one's neighbor. But let's set politics aside. Nietzsche was not a political scientist. He was a psychologist. And he was a biologist of the spirit. For Nietzsche, the will to power is not the desire to become president. It is the fundamental engine of all living things in the universe. In the 19th century, everyone revered Charles Darwin. Darwin said, "The main goal of life is survival. Animals want to preserve themselves. They want to adapt." Nietzsche looked at nature and said, "Nonsense. Look at a tree in the jungle. If it merely wanted to survive, it would remain a small bush in the shade. But it expends colossal resources. It risks breaking from the wind. It reaches upward, pushing its neighbors aside with its branches. It doesn't just want to exist. It wants to grow. It wants to capture more sunlight. It wants to demonstrate its strength." Life is not a striving for self-preservation, Nietzsche writes. Life is a striving for expansion, for growth, for accumulation of forces, for superiority. Survival is merely a byproduct. We survive to continue expansion. The will to power is the energy that makes an athlete train to the point of vomiting. It's the energy that makes a scientist sit in the lab all night, trying to subject the chaos of facts to a single theory. It's the energy that makes an artist apply paint to canvas, imposing their vision on the world. All these are acts of power. But power over what? Over resistance. We feel happy only when we overcome an obstacle. Gamers know this best. If a game is too easy, if you're in God mode, you get bored. You quit the game. You need monsters. You need challenges. You need the feeling that your strength grows in struggling against resistance. This feeling of growth, that is happiness, according to Nietzsche. But here arises the main trap. How does the will to power manifest in a weak person versus a strong person? The difference is colossal. A weak person, a person with a damaged spirit, cannot control themselves. They are afraid inside, and to feel any kind of power, they try to dominate others. Domestic violence, bullying at school, the tyranny of a petty boss, political repression, all of these, according to Nietzsche, are signs of weakness. It's a hysterical attempt to prove to oneself, I mean something because I can make you suffer. This is the will to power of a loser. A strong person, an Übermensch, is not interested in controlling others. It bores him. Why manage a flock of sheep if you are a lion? His will to power is directed inward. This is called self-mastery. The most vivid example of the will to power for Nietzsche is not a general on horseback, but an ascetic, a monk. Think about it. A person who forbids himself delicious food, forbids himself sex, forbids himself comfort. Why does he do this? He proves that his spirit is stronger than his most basic animal instincts. He tortures his body to feel power over it. It is an act of supreme might. The Übermensch uses this energy for creativity. He takes his passions, his aggression, his fears, and sublimates them. He transforms the chaos within himself into order. He writes symphonies, builds bridges, creates new ethical systems. He doesn't conquer countries. He conquers reality and gives it form. Nietzsche tells us, don't be ashamed of your ambitions. Don't be ashamed of your desire to be strong. Christian morality has taught us for centuries to be meek, to turn the other cheek, to be ashamed of our strength. Nietzsche cries out, enough. Weakness is not a virtue. A toothless rabbit is not kind. It is simply toothless. Virtue is when you have fangs. You can bite, but you possess the discipline not to do so, and you direct that strength toward creation. The will to power is the fuel for your engine. Without it, you will not cross the rope. Without it, you will not endure the thought of eternal recurrence. You need this power to fulfill Nietzsche's main commandment, a commandment that sounds paradoxical, but is the key to his entire teaching. He didn't leave us 10 commandments like Moses. He left us one enigmatic phrase. We've reached the finale, and now, having dismantled the ruins of old gods, stared into the abyss, and agreed to eternal recurrence, we are left with one final question: how to live. Nietzsche didn't leave us a rule book. He despised those who say, do A, then do B, and you'll be happy. For him, that's slave mentality. Instead of instructions, he left us a motto, a phrase he borrowed from the ancient Greek poet Pindar, but infused with a completely new, explosive meaning. Become what you are. Sounds like a slogan from a cheap sneaker commercial or a self-help course, right? Just be yourself. But don't let the simplicity fool you. For Nietzsche, this phrase doesn't mean relaxation. It means war. Most people think being yourself means accepting your flaws, lying on the couch and saying, well, this is just how I was born. Nietzsche would laugh in your face. For him, you is not what you are born with. It's not a given. You is what you create. Imagine your life isn't a treasure hunt where you walk around with a map looking for your destiny hidden by someone in a chest. Your life is a construction. You are the architect. The material is your passions, your talents, your traumas, your history, and even your biology. To become what you are means taking this chaos within you and giving it form, transforming random character traits into style, transforming suffering into wisdom, transforming aggression into art. Nietzsche writes one of his most beautiful lines, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Don't be afraid of your inner chaos. Don't be afraid of your contradictions. Don't try to be normal. Normality is a paved road. It's easy to walk on, but no flowers grow there. The Übermensch is one who has made a masterpiece of his life. This doesn't mean you have to become a famous artist or politician. A masterpiece can be the life of a teacher, a doctor, a gardener. The main criterion is autonomy. You do it not because your mother said so, not because it's written in the Bible, not because it's trendy on Instagram. You do it because it's your law. You have become your own lawgiver. This is incredibly terrifying. We, humans, are evolutionarily programmed to seek a shepherd. We want someone big and strong to tell us what to do. We seek a father. We seek a Führer. We seek a guru. We seek an algorithm. Nietzsche cries out to us across the centuries, "Stop! There are no more shepherds. God is dead. The heavens are empty." This sounds like bad news, but in reality, it is the greatest liberation in history. Imagine the throne room of the universe. For thousands of years, God the Father sat there, judging us, punishing us, and showing us the way. Now the throne is empty. No one is there, and you have a choice. You can weep at the foot of the empty throne, begging ghosts to return. You can enthrone an idol, money, nation, science. Or you can gather your courage, ascend the steps, and sit on it yourself. Take total, absolute responsibility for your world. Become the god of your own micro-universe. This is the Übermensch. This is one who needs no excuses. One who dances on the abyss not because he hopes to go to heaven, but because the dance itself brings him joy. We began this story with how Nietzsche's ideas were stolen and distorted by people who wanted to march in lockstep. But Nietzsche's philosophy is an antidote against any lockstep. It is for individuals. It is for those who feel a dancing star within themselves. Your life is short. It will flash by like a spark. The demon with the hourglass is already around the corner. Don't waste this time being a copy. Don't waste it on resentment. Don't waste it on the comfort of the last man. Live dangerously. Build on the slopes of Vesuvius. Love your fate, no matter how heavy it may be. God is dead, but you are alive. And right now, this very second, the pen is in your hand. What will you write next?